Hello, good people. This is Sister Julia Walsh. Here at Messy Jesus Business, we're on our summer break, but we wanted to pop into your podcast feed with a special episode, a recording of a recent conversation with my friend Kaya Oakes. Kaya Oakes is a journalist and author of several books who teaches writing at UC Berkeley. She was born and raised in Oakland, California, where she still lives. In this conversation, you'll hear us talking about her new book, entitled Not So Sorry: Abusers, False Apologies, and the Limits of Forgiveness. The book is an examination of forgiveness in contemporary society, how forgiveness can be abused by the powerful, and how forgiveness can be better considered and used by all of us. Also, our conversation brings up Kaya's recent breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. She's written beautifully and eloquently about this in her newsletter, so we'll link to that as well as our previous interview with Kaya from 2021 in our show notes. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you mid-September when we return with a full podcast season, and look forward to being in touch then. Peace and all good. So Kaya, thank you so much for your book. Not So Sorry.
Thank you so much for your book, For Love of the Broken Body.
Yeah, thank you.
Is excellent, by the way. I'm sure all your listeners have bought multiple copies and
Well,
their friends. So, but just a reminder, Julia's book is wonderful. And I saw it, the beginning of it many years ago, and have seen you work on it for so long. So it's just so nice that it's finally out there.
It happened. Yeah. It's been a wonderful release. Yeah. Thanks be to God. And congratulations to you. Book number 5 in the midst of so much.
This book started the essays that became Not So Sorry. I probably started writing in 2018. So 6 years ago. Yeah. It's a long time, as you know. People don't realize, they hear, oh, you got a book deal, and then they see the book come out, but they don't see the work that goes before you get the book deal of like finding a publisher, getting rejected from publishers, or like finding an editor and then realizing that's not the right editor. And so there's a lot of things that happen in that process.
Do you want to talk now about like, how are you? How is the state of Kaya? Or do you want to talk about the book?
I can do either one. Actually, I can address both of those things because I was talking to my therapist this morning. I have a therapist who works with people who have, life-changing illnesses. And I was telling her part of the struggle of promoting this book is sort of like, when I started to write it, I was not sick, and then I got sick, and I was sick through editing the book and bringing it into the world, and now I'm coming out of treatment and the book is here. So like the book is always going to be associated with my cancer diagnosis and treatment and surgery and all that stuff. So it feels very foreign, kind of like, what are you? Have we met? Like, but it's still me and it's still things I care about. I'm just having a little bit of cognitive dissonance in terms of, the Kaya who wrote this book is not the same person who greets its arrival. And it's much harder for me to do what other writers can do for promo, which is traveling a lot. I have to be careful with flying because I'm at risk with this condition called lymphedema. So when they take lymph nodes out of your arm, when you have surgery, your whole arm can just blow up like a balloon and never go back to normal. So like I can't go on a book tour.
Right.
I have a limited capacity for like in-person events. So I'm doing 2 locally. But my publisher said that's okay. Now that events really work anymore. As you've learned, probably sometimes 5 people show up, sometimes 100. But I tell that to you now because you just got done with promo and you know how draining it is and how much out of you. It's fun. And it's really fun to talk about your book, but you also wrote that book over many years, and it's about a specific part of your life, right? That's
Right.
many years ago. And now here you are many years
Yeah.
later having to revisit that.
Yeah.
That's the cognitive dissonance that I'm talking about.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
How are, like, who is Kaya now?
You could ask my therapist. She's good. I I'm still hanging in there. Like I still teach. I'm in the midst of my summer session class that it's a 3-week class. I still get an opportunity whenever I get on these mics to have visits from kitties. I'm holding that to Julia for those who are not seeing this. I'm still living in the same house. I still have the same family and friends.
Yeah.
I have a lot more awareness of my mortality. I have a lot more experience as a patient and what it's like to be in the medical, and you had this as well, like to be in hospitals a lot, to be at doctor's appointments a lot, to know your doctor better than you know some of the people you work with, maybe. I have the experience of having to talk about cancer and wanting to talk about it, and some people receiving that with amazing grace and kindness, and some people just not knowing what to say and just kind of.
Hmm.
So I'm much the same, but changed in the sense of I'm still figuring out what's next. I used to be very driven, very ambitious, like I need to be doing things all the time.
Hmm.
Busyness was a virtue in my life, and I just don't
Mm.
feel that way anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Does that mean you're more restful now?
I'm aware of my limits in a way. I used to just push through them. Like I'll drink another coffee, I'll go for a walk around the block and just keep working. And now I find myself saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can't do any more than this. Like after I was just about to get on this call with you and I'm like, oh, there's dishes in the sink, there's laundry, there's this. And I'm like, I can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, right. How exciting.
So
Yeah.
I know that you to think about that a lot, like awareness of limits, right? Dealing
Yeah.
with your eyesight, dealing with that
Hmm.
change in your life.
That's right.
You find yourself more conscious of your own limits too.
Yeah.
So the Festival of Faith and Writing speak in 2020, and of course it was COVID. And then earlier this year they sent me an email and they're like, we were going to invite you this year, but we kept sending the email to the wrong email address. And
Oh.
so can you speak? And I'm like, no, I have breast cancer. I'm like, I can't come speak. Could I do a virtual talk? And they're like, yeah, we don't really do that anymore. And
Mm.
then of course it rolled around and you go on social media and all your friends are there and like, they're all seeing each other. And I was sad, but I was also like, that kind of event for me anyway is so draining. I'm an introvert and I don't do very well in crowds. So it's kind of relief to have an
Yeah.
excuse, right? So it was frustrating. And then another person I know who has breast cancer, she went anyway. And I was like, what?
Wow.
I could have gone to Calvin for
Mm.
that, but I would have been bald and sick and like
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. So
Right.
less
Yeah.
less sick and I can do little things. And I'm really just happy to be able to do anything at this point.
Mm. Mm. Do you find that on the side of your treatments, you're still experiencing fear? And is there also gratitude? Like, what's the feeling?
I think cancer patients get this narrative of forced gratitude, like
Oh.
when you're being treated, being told you should be grateful.
Mm.
I went to a support session that my medical provider had at the end of treatment, and they're like, it was run by a social worker, and she's very nice, but it was like, you should keep a gratitude journal. And I was like, you can't force gratitude, kind of like you
Mm.
can't force forgiveness, right?
Yeah, let's go to that in a minute here.
So I am grateful, but I had to get here organically and on my own. I couldn't have people telling me to feel
Mm.
grateful, but it has to be on your own time. It has to be on
Yeah.
God's time, Kairos, right?
Yeah.
Kairos isn't always instantaneous.
Right, right.
So on the other side of treatment, I also feel like I need time to figure out what just happened. Like I call my cancer, and this was very St. Francis, right? I call it the wolf because
Mm.
it follows me around. I'm gonna be at some risk of it coming back for the rest of my life, the kind of cancer I had. There's some kinds of breast cancer that can come back very quickly, and then there's some kinds that can come back later. And so they load you up with treatments and pills and all of this to reduce those odds. And so the wolf is always going to be behind me, but some days I'm like, it's not, it's sleeping or it's not,
Mm.
I'm not aware of it. Some days I feel like it's really scaring me. But yeah, so you're gonna have to help me out here, Julia. What was the St. Francis and the wolf story? I know there was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wolf
So
of the wolf that was scaring everybody in the town.
in the town of Gubbio, it's one of those that's hagiography. So, you know, like we don't know if it's right. The story is that Francis was called because the wolf was eating all the animals and everyone in the town was scared. And
That's
then
right.
Francis went and talked to the wolf and said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "Well, I'm hungry." And so they said, "Well, oh, let's just feed the wolf." Right.
Yeah,
It's a lovely metaphor. And I think, I mean, it is a sense of like where, yeah, what are we most afraid of? And are those fears controlling us? Are they getting us all worked up? Or can we get to the deeper cause and befriend those
yeah,
and respond with compassion and mercy, right? So yeah, that is a constant invitation.
yeah. There's a lot of shoulds in disability, like this as a person
You,
who lives with it.
it's a
People,
disability awareness month, by the way, Kyle.
oh yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's gonna be tons of fun for me. Pink everything. But as a person with a disability, you get told a lot of shoulds. Like you should be brave, you should be courageous, you should be strong, you should be a model to other people who have disabilities, you should be grateful, you should be forgiving, you should be thankful. You get this all day, right?
Right.
In our culture where happiness is the greatest virtue,
Yeah.
the self is above community. I
Mm.
actually want to read this book that I just heard about. It's called The Resilience Myth by Sonia Chirali, and she talks about how Americans think resilience is a virtue, but only in an individual sense. You know, survived breast cancer without a community, my
Yeah.
medical community, my friends, my family, my workplace, everything. I needed insurance, I needed a union to
Yeah.
get me the insurance, all that kind of stuff. So resilience to me feels very community based, but I'm so tired of all the shoulds that sick people and people with disabilities, whether visible or invisible, are constantly hearing. And I'd like to counter that narrative a little bit, which is you've known me long enough to know a lot of my writing is about countering presumptions and narratives that we have about
Mhm.
fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Usually
Right.
go through each book I've written and say Kaya
Yeah.
Oaks argues against blank.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And so, and not so
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
you're arguing that we shouldn't just throw forgiveness away. Like
yeah,
forgiveness needs to be done with
yeah.
intentionality, a consciousness. You're not saying that we shouldn't be forgiving, right? Let's break that open a little bit. For you, based on your research, as you put this book together, how do you define forgiveness now?
What I learned from writing this book, researching it, thinking about it for all those years is that forgiveness is a process, not a product.
Yeah.
Too much of the time, we expect forgiveness to be the immediate result of something, usually a conversation or a request or a letter or a statement or whatever. But we don't give people time to process their way to forgiveness. And much like our view of resilience is very individualistic. Oh, you're so resilient, you're so strong. I hear that quite a lot since I got
Mhm.
cancer, and I'm sure you do too. Especially with the subject matter in your book, right?
When people tell me I'm inspiring, I get really frustrated. I'm like, what? I'm inspiring to not to me.
Yeah,
Like,
like I still have to get out of bed in the morning. You don't see that part. But like your book and your life also model this idea that you need community in order to be resilient. And I think my book also makes the case that you need community in order to forgive, and we've forgotten about that. In the final chapter, I talked about restorative justice because I
Um,
think that's the end point. And I love the example of this school here in Oakland in a kind of tough neighborhood, much like many of the schools in Chicago and
mm,
places where you've lived and taught. They brought in a restorative justice consultant, and the kids started doing restorative justice tables where they would,
mm,
if there's a fight on the playground, they would try to fix, instead of student A and student B trying to forgive each other, it was like, can the community forgive student A and student B? And like, what do student A and student B need to prevent them from fighting again? Because they're fighting all the time, right? You know, those kids. And like, so what does the community need? And so oftentimes with students, it's problems at home, trauma that they're processing, whatever, and they've never talked about it. They've never had a place. So this school started restorative justice circles at their school, and it really worked. And that story inspired me to get to the end of the book and think
mm.
restorative justice is a model for a collaborative kind of forgiveness that I think is closer to what Jesus was talking about too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the messiness of Jesus's teachings as they're interpreted today and what forgiveness might have really been, what Jesus was really inviting his listeners to consider and what we've lost over time.
Yeah, so in researching the book, I talked to Tom Bolin, who's a wonderful scholar of the Hebrew Bible, also a really nice guy, by the way. A shout out to him. And he said, "Do you know about effeminate?" And I said, "You know what?" Like my one semester of undergrad Greek. And he sort of broke it down for me that the word that Jesus was using in his case would have been Aramaic, right? That it got translated in Greek to effeminate, which means to take space, to
Mm,
make distance between yourself and someone.
mm,
And he doesn't specify, right? He doesn't say take 3 months and then come back and bring a 5 point report. The connotation is you need to put distance between yourself and
mm.
this person who's harmed you, this thing that's harmed you. And that really opened my eyes a lot because I was raised in this Catholic church that was really like, if you don't forgive somebody, it's bad and you're a bad person, you're a sinner if you don't forgive people. But we never really learned what forgiveness was. It was
Mm.
always just kind of like
Make
move.
sure you do that. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
right. Like
Yeah,
move
yeah.
past it. Just put it behind you. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
And we were all constantly given examples in stories of saints who forgave, but murderers and rapists
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And they were saints because they were forgiving, but we were never really told again, like how did they get to that point
Mm.
internally where they were able to do that? So it's that liminal space between the asking for forgiveness and the granting of it that as a Catholic, I felt I was really actually very poorly equipped to understand.
Mm.
And I don't blame the church for that. I sort of think it's a combination of popular understandings of what Jesus was teaching that get mixed up in all these more American ideas. Again, we're back to the individual and moving on from things, putting things in the past, ignoring the past, burying the past. And that's not what he was talking about. So
Yeah.
I think about it now that I've written this book as more like grace, like in that sense of like that space between being asked for forgiveness and granting it can be a very graced space. And it's a messy space of like working things out. But that's why he said, if I'm gonna eat, right, take distance
Yeah.
between yourself and the harm doer.
As you describe it that way, it's helpful for me because honestly, I love you to death and I love your writing and your work. I really do.
Okay.
And I was cynical when I started reading your book, probably like every other more radical Christian who wants to take Jesus at his word and has particular interpretations. I hate to admit that, but I was, Kaya. and,
I forgive you.
thank you for forgiving me. But I mean, I got through it quickly because how could I not, right? You write so well and you make a good case for me to explore a topic that I sort of want to like dig my heels in the sand about. And I'm particularly passionate about forgiveness, reconciliation, and have been since college because I wrote my undergrad thesis on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South
Yes.
Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Desmond Tutu fan, right? So I greatly value the importance of storytelling and how in telling our stories and we are making attempts to own the truth of harm and right wrongs, right? And that's the importance of good history as well. And for most of my life, I will admit, forgiveness has been pretty easy. It really has. Until maybe recently. And
Mhm.
as I maybe I'm getting older and I'm becoming better, or who knows what's going on. But like it's becoming more difficult. And it's perhaps because now the harm that I'm experiencing isn't trivial, but it's sometimes it's cutting to the identity of who I am, right?
Mhm.
And if forgiveness is as you describe, if Jesus was telling us to really allow space and to turn to the community and go through a process and not to forget the harm, but to not maybe let the harm define us,
Mhm.
that sounds really healing and constructive to me.
It's interesting that you brought up Tutu because I wrote about Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the book. I think that that Ubuntu concept is so beautiful, and I think it is Christ-like. So that concept that for those who aren't familiar that with what we're talking about, it's a word in, is it Xhosa, the language of
It's in several of the language families in southern and central Africa. It shows up again and again. Yeah, different
Yeah, and he
language.
calls it, the phrase he uses is a bundle of life, like that we're
Yeah.
bundled together. And it's fascinating to me that during those hearings that the people who committed the harms of apartheid were brought into the public to confess,
Yeah.
to talk about what they had done, to talk about how they were going to change or like what they were going to do in order to rectify the past. And then they get to the process of like, okay, now we can get around to healing. And like, and we almost have it backwards in America, kind of like, I was thinking about, can you imagine if the people who invaded the Capitol on January 6th in 2020
Oh God.
were asked to come before a committee and talk
Yes.
about what they did and admit that it was wrong and describe what they were doing to make themselves better. And the whole country watched it live,
Right. Right. That would do
right?
it. That would be amazing.
That's what
That's
happened in South Africa.
I actually wrote a piece and that didn't get published, basically arguing after January 6th that that's what we needed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't do it. And now there's this wound in our country that's never going to heal or not anytime soon.
It's going to take a while. Yeah.
It's going to take a while. And South Africa, of course, has reopened and reclosed that many times. But I think what they did was very Christ-like. When Jesus told people to take space, the purpose was to bring them back into the community, right? And this is over and over again, like when he's meeting people and having conversations with them, he's trying to like bring them back into relationship, either with him or God or a community or whatever. And so that's where I think, again, we have it backwards. It's sort of like we want to feel, oh, forgive me because I need to feel better about myself
Mm,
rather than what happened to you? How do you feel? And tell me what I can do to so that I will change so that this won't happen again.
yes.
It's interesting you said it was easier when you were younger. It was probably because you hadn't been through as much. And the
Hmm.
older we get, the more we see in the world, the more we travel and talk to different people and get to know different people. It's not that we become cynical, it's just that we have a lot more experiences to draw from.
Right.
Yeah.
Skeptical is the word I was about your book. I mixed up those words.
Yeah.
It was skeptical, not cynical. Sorry.
I still have chemo brain like 6 months later. I'll be like, what was I saying? But I think that skepticism is healthy, right?
Yeah.
Especially today, my mom just texted me like an hour ago. My mom's 85 years old. She has Parkinson's disease and she lives
Mm,
alone, so she needs a lot of help. And she's like, does this look like a phishing text? And somebody had texted her like, your car sped through a toll plaza, and you are like, Mom, I can't drive. And like, Mom, it's obviously fake, like delete it. But they
yeah.
wanted her to have that immediate response of like, oh my God, I did something wrong. I have to pay the fee. And that's sort of how we treat forgiveness, right? So
Mm, mm,
that's something that I wanted to write the book as an argument against that. But I also wanted to write about the fact that forgiveness is the end point, right? Like it is the end point of these hard conversations about things like reparations and Native American genocide and the Catholic Church abuse scandal. And so at some point, we process, we air out what happened, you talk about what you're going to do differently, but we keep skipping all the steps in
you do.
between. And as a result, are we really forgiving or are we again back to just asking for a blank slate?
Yeah, yeah. I know one of the things you explore is what are the limits of forgiveness? And what would you argue now? Are there limits? Are there things that are unforgivable?
I think that's up to the individual to decide, but I also think that there are limits to forgiveness in the sense that there are limits to our understanding that forgiveness always equals erasure and permission, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
A lot of the book, and this is a trigger warning to anybody, I mean, you can pick it up and see that the subtitle includes abuse. A lot of the problem is that sometimes forgiveness is used as a cloak for abuse, and
Mm,
that's very toxic. So I think in cases where a person, especially we see this a lot with celebrities or like people with a lot of power, in the
hmm
Catholic Church, right? For example, that they are so focused on holding on to their power that they don't want to actually acknowledge what they did wrong. And so as a result, the people on the other end of it are asked to forgive them, but they don't know exactly what that person's doing to prevent it from
mm,
happening again. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You did right. Forcing someone to forgive can become a form of spiritual abuse. And I
Yes.
found that such a thought provoking phrase because, you know, is it actually forgiveness if it's forced?
Exactly. And that does fall into spiritual abuse in a lot of
Yeah.
cases because communities, and this isn't just Catholics, a lot of the language around restorative justice comes from Mennonites, but
Mm,
Mennonites enabled John Howard Yoder, who was a professor at Notre Dame and who wrote a lot about restorative justice, but he abused a lot of women. And the
mm,
Mennonite community was so focused on returning him to the community that they kept bringing him back. And then he would just go out and abuse again. So they'd
mm.
forgive him and then he'd do it again, forgive him and then he'd do it again. I hesitate to say this, but I think it can be enabling of people like that. So I think forgiveness sometimes is not possible when somebody hasn't actually done any work to stop what they're doing.
Yeah. So, what I'm hearing you suggest there, which I think is important, is if the point of forgiveness is to rebuild the community, and community is relational, there needs to be work on both sides
Mhm.
for
Exactly.
transformation. Like, I might forgive someone so I feel better because
Mhm.
I don't want the hate to be creating toxicity in my body and I don't want them to have power over me.
Mhm.
But perhaps the forgiveness cannot really transform the community unless the other person is also doing work to change.
Exactly. And I think that things like prison reform and restorative justice and community education are ways of helping people to acknowledge what they've done wrong and process it because it doesn't happen instantaneously. You work with
Yeah.
prisoners, right? Or you did
Yeah.
in the past, so you know that a lot of the time, the impression I get from people I know who've been in jail is that you spend a lot of time thinking about what you did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or
And,
they're thinking about what they're going to do when they get out.
or what you're going to do when you get out, right?
It's
So
basically one or the
that's
other.
basically the two states. It sounds like cancer treatment, actually. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what comes out of that is sometimes transformation and sometimes not. And I think it depends on the individual, right?
Mm.
Like you've probably seen prisoners who really regret what they did, who reach out to the families of, if
Mm.
they've like a murder situation, I do want to meet the parents, like I want to see them face to face, I want to work with them. But those are rare and exceptional, I think, because it's
Yeah.
not guaranteed that it's going to work. So it's a
Yeah.
very high risk endeavor. But
Yeah. It is. I'm reminded of when I was teaching high school theology. I need to look up what this documentary was called because I think you'd enjoy it. It'd be so interesting. There was a documentary that I used with my students that was about a murder within a Catholic parish here in the United States. And it
mm,
was like teen boys, one killed the other. And so, how did the church pray together? And in the end, it was a communal
mhm.
process of reconciliation that allowed for the forgiveness to occur. And it was people reaching out to those that were inside prison and vice versa. That I think is fitting with what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, and like I said, I hope it's clear in the book that I'm not against forgiveness. I think I
I
need
would be so weird if you were.
it. I know. I
Like,
need it, you need it, everybody needs it.
yeah.
But also that I'm against this idea that we should demand it of people.
Yeah.
I think that's unfair. And I've been in the position when people have asked me for it, and I wasn't ready to say that.
Mm,
And I said it anyway, and then I was like, I said that, and it didn't feel authentic.
mm,
And so I know what it's like to say I want to, but I'm not ready, and how
yeah.
people are really disappointed by that. And so maybe we could be less disappointed.
Right.
And
Maybe we could say things like instead of say, please forgive me, we could say, I hope you will consider forgiving
yes,
me when you're ready, like
there you
a little
go.
more
Yes.
gentle and like allowing people the time and the space they need.
There's the ephemeny again. Again, Jesus is like, give it a little time, give it a little space. It's an interesting experiment to go back to those scenes in the Bible when he talks about forgiveness and to reimagine it as not like a greeting card kind of forgiveness
Yeah.
that's very shallow and just a gesture, and to imagine it as a process. It's like it's him saying, give yourself time and space to kind of decide what God's calling you to do.
Mm, Thank you, Kaya. Thanks so much for your work and no matter where life takes you, you've had a great impact on a lot of important and necessary conversations in American religion. So you can know your legacy is there, even if you decide you don't want to write a book again, as
Oh
because
my
now
goodness.
you're in a rest zone as you can
Yes,
be,
it's not
you
going to
know?
happen very soon. Let's put it that way.
Right?
Who knows? The future is really ambiguous right now, and I'm just kind of
Yeah.
leaning into that. But I'm glad I had the opportunity to write this book, and I'm really glad I'm here to see it come out. I mean, that's the best part of all. So even if the book launch is going to be me lying on the couch, like it's fine. And
Oh, what day is it on?
I'm so excited. July 30th is the official
The
release.
30th? Oh, I'll be in
Yeah.
retreat that day.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm gonna do one event in Berkeley with my friend Mark French, who's a podcaster.
Okay.
We're gonna film it and put it on YouTube. And
That's
so
gonna be great. Yeah.
people can join in on the comments. And then I'll probably do an Instagram live at some point with Chris Stedman, who's
Hmm.
another great religion writer, just a sweetheart too. So yeah, something will come together. But
Yeah.
happy that it's here. And I'm so happy to see you and to catch up with you. I'm
Yeah.
appreciated you reaching out when I was ill. And also just like our friendship means a lot to me, even if I was telling another friend this recently, like years and years ago, I was on a retreat and this old Jesuit who he unfortunately died during COVID. I said, "Oh, it's going to be hard to leave you because like we've been together so intensely. It was the 19th annotation. You're like praying really intensely, and you need your spiritual director." And he said, "Well, we're soul companions. We might not see each other every week or every month, but our souls are always going to walk together." And that's how I feel about you. I feel like our
Mm,
souls always will walk together in
thanks, Kaya. I feel the same. Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. I feel so grateful for our friendship too. And it's just, yeah, I wish it were easier for us to hang out, but
well,
at
I
least
love Chicago
technology helps
so
us
much,
out.
so maybe I'll take the train there. Then I won't have to worry about my balloon arm. So that would be a fun adventure.
Yeah, get in the sleeper car.
Oh yeah, that maybe that'll be
Yeah.
my I've been trying to figure out my post-cancer vacation plans, and so maybe
Yeah,
that can go on the list.
that
So
would be awesome.
it'd be great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you have a lot more treatment left?
I'm on a targeted treatment. It's a pill that I take for 2 years, and I have to have blood work like every 2 weeks
Mm.
because it's pretty hard on your system. It's basically oral chemo, but it should hopefully bring down the odds that the cancer will come back. And then, like a lot of people, I have to take hormone blockers
Mm.
because I had a cancer that's caused by estrogen, and
Mm.
apparently I just had too much.
Gee
Uh,
whiz.
so I'm on a medication that stops my body from making estrogen because it's not just made in your ovaries, it's made in your bones, your adrenal glands. My oncologist explained all of this. So I've got about 5 more years of medication
Mm.
ahead of me. The 2 years of the targeted treatment is the hardest part, though, because it's a
Yeah.
grind. My doctor was like, "Yeah, get ready because this is not going to be easy,
Mm.
but it'll reduce your recurrence odds." And how are you doing with your eyes? Are you stable? Are you
Yeah, I'm stable.
good? I'm really
Yeah.
glad to hear that. And are you
Yeah.
getting good help from low vision? You said a low vision clinic.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the best thing I have right now to help me is a great therapist that
Yeah.
understands vision loss,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly. Like me and my cancer therapy.
yeah, I mean, here we are in the messiness of our lives. There's joys and there's crosses, and God's with us, and thank God we have each other.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Amen.
thank you for coming on the Messy Jesus Business once again. You're
Thanks for having
my
me back.
only return guest.
Really?
And yeah.
So privileged. Thank you. I'm so happy. I'm really happy because I'm like, Julia has a lot of different people on the show, and I get to come on twice.
And congratulations once again on Not So Sorry. I hope that every reader picks it up and it contributes to great conversations about forgiveness, which we so much need.
Yes, thank you again for having me back.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Messy Jesus Business is produced and edited by Colin Wamskans. You can find us online at messyjesusbusiness.com and on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. If you like what you heard, please be sure to mention our podcast to your friends and followers. And we'd love to have your support via Patreon. From the bottom of our hearts and the middle of the mess, thank you. Messy Jesus Business is produced in partnership with the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. You can learn more about our religious community and donate to our mission at www.fspa.org. I'm Sister Julia Walsh, and I'll catch up with you next time. Until then, peace and all good.